She screamed so loud the horses jumped. "Get off my HOA property, or you're going to jail." That's what this woman, this walking hurricane in heels, yelled at my wife while 3 police cruisers boxed in our ranch like we were fugitives. She stood there in a bright red suit, shaking forged eviction papers, demanding officers arrest my wife for trespassing on our own property. And Amelia? My wife just sipped her coffee, calm, quiet, still in her bathrobe. Then she made one phone call, just one, and that's when everything changed. The mood, the tension, the looks on the cops' faces. Because here's what no one, not the officers, not the neighbors, not even me, realized at that moment. That woman they were threatening was the director of white-collar crime operations for the FBI. But let's back up. Because to understand why she didn't even flinch with half the county's police on our lawn, you need to know what happened 6 months earlier. That's when a woman named Deborah Reynolds moved in down the road. From the moment she arrived, it felt like the wind shifted, like the whole valley exhaled and didn't inhale again. My name's John Miller, just a horse trainer, nothing fancy. I've run our family ranch for 15 years with my wife, Amelia. We got married young, bought this property when it was nothing but farmland and red dirt. We poured our lives into this place. 5 acres of fences, stables, meadows, and peace. And for 15 years, no one bothered us until she showed up. Deborah Reynolds. It was a Tuesday morning when I first saw her. I was working with a young mare in the training ring when a car rolled up the driveway. Sleek, silver, too clean for our dusty roads. Out stepped a woman in a blazer so sharp it could cut glass and heels that made no sense on gravel. She looked around like she was inspecting damage, not admiring the land, not seeing. The way the morning light kissed the fields. "Nice horses," she sniffed, wrinkling her nose. Though in my last neighborhood, the HOA banned roosters for being too loud. Can't imagine what they'd think of this. I remember wiping my hands on my jeans, walking up to her slow. "John Miller, welcome to the area." Her smile was too perfect. It didn't reach her eyes. "Deborah Reynolds. I'm establishing the Oak Valley Homeowners Association." "This area needs standards?" I laughed. Thought it was a joke. "Ma'am, this is ranch land. We don't do HOAs out here." She didn't laugh back. Just tightened her smile like a rubber band. "Well, that's about to change." Then she pulled out a clipboard and started taking pictures of our property. Every angle, every corner, no permission, no explanation. When she finally left, I had a bad feeling. A weight I couldn't explain. That evening, I told Amelia everything over dinner. She was at her laptop, like always, tapping away at work emails. She froze mid-keystroke when I said the name. "Deborah Reynolds?" she asked. "Yeah, she's talking about starting an HOA." She didn't say anything for a second. Then very slowly she nodded. "Interesting," she muttered. Her fingers started flying across the keys like she was typing a report for Congress. "Keep anything she gives you," she said. "Document everything." 2 days later, the first letter came. Slapped into our mailbox like it had authority. Homemade letterhead, cheap printer ink, something called the Oak Valley Homeowners Association, with a sad little logo, and an invoice, $200 in monthly dues. We laughed. We thought it was just some power trip fantasy, but then Billy Jenkins stopped by. Now Billy's a legend in our county. 70 years old, lives half a mile down the road, and somehow has 500,000 followers on his country life video channel. He's like if a cowboy and a YouTuber had a baby. I showed him the letter. He let out a long whistle. "Son," he said, "I've lived here 43 years, and I ain't never heard of no HOA." He pulled out his phone and started filming right there on our porch. "This here's Oak Valley Karen," he told his viewers. "She thinks she's gonna HOA us out of our own land. Let's see what the internet thinks." By that afternoon, his video had over 50,000 views. Comments rolled in like thunder. Stories of nightmare HOAs, of people losing their homes to petty tyrants. It was funny. At first, until Deborah showed up again. This time she wasn't alone. She'd recruited a guy named Mark, another newcomer, who'd bought property a few plots down. They marched up to our gate with a Bluetooth speaker and a live stream rolling. "I call this emergency HOA meeting to order," she said, talking into her phone like she was announcing a war. "As president of the Oak Valley HOA, I move to address the issue of commercial livestock operations. Residential community," she repeated like a prayer. I shouted from the barn, "Lady, this is agricultural land." She ignored me, raised her hand. So did Mark. "Motion passes. Operations must cease within 30 days. Daily fines of $100. Couldn't believe what I was hearing. But Billy, God bless Billy, was filming everything. "Y'all hear that?" He said into the camera. "She's trying to shut down a legal horse ranch in ag-zoned land. Let's see how this goes." The internet exploded, but the damage was only just beginning. That week, we got a 50-page packet in our mailbox, printed in Comic Sans, titled Oak Valley HOA Rules and Regulations. And I wish I was joking, but I'm not. Inside were rules like, all fences must be beige. Grass height must be maintained at exactly 2 inches. Maximum of 2 horses per property. No livestock allowed under any circumstances. It was absurd. It was insane. It was something else. Amelia looked over the packet, her face going cold. She snapped photos of every page with methodical precision. "She's escalating fast," she said, sliding the pages into a folder. "This isn't just a nuisance neighbor situation." "What is it then?" I asked. My wife didn't answer. She just opened her laptop and started typing. Every day after that, it got worse. Deborah posted edited videos of us online, painting our ranch as some kind of criminal operation. She faked community posts, accused us of polluting the water, disturbing wildlife, hurting property values. Amelia started installing more security cameras. High-tech ones, night vision, zoom lenses. "These are military grade," I said once. "Government employee discount," she replied, not looking up from her laptop. At night, I'd catch her reading documents, files, watching videos I couldn't recognize. Then came the cease and desist letter. It demanded we stop all horse-related activity immediately, citing violation of HOA ordinances and neighborhood degradation. I wanted to call a lawyer, but Amelia, my sweet, quiet wife who gardened and baked and read mystery novels, took the letter from my hand and smoothed it out. "Not yet," she said. And that's when I first noticed it, that look in her eyes. Cold. Calculating. Not angry. Not afraid. Focused. Like she'd seen this before. Like this wasn't her first HOA war. What was my wife hiding, and why did she tell me to give her 1 more week? Something wasn't right. I could feel it. Not just in Deborah's madness. Not just in her made-up HOA or her live streams trying to frame us as neighborhood criminals. It was Amelia. My wife had started staying up later and later. Her laptop screen looked harmless, email, online gardening forums, recipes, but her eyes were sharp, focused. She'd excuse herself from dinner to take work calls. Late ones that came from area codes I didn't recognize. And when I asked, she'd shrug it off. Government work. Always urgent for someone. That's what she said. But it didn't feel like the Amelia I knew. The one who cried during horse movies. The one who spent weekends planting wildflowers near the fences just because she thought it made the land sing. Something had shifted. And then things started breaking in Deborah's world. It began with her live streams. She'd go live on social media, ranting about how our ranch was toxic and violating community standards. But the videos would keep glitching, cutting out at crucial moments, freezing whenever she built up to some big lie. She claimed we were sabotaging her internet, which would have been hilarious if it wasn't so bizarre. Next, her HOA Facebook page suddenly changed. It went from Oak Valley HOA to Fake-ha, do not trust. All her posts were altered. Her description now read, satirical parody of homeowners associations everywhere. She flipped out, posted videos screaming about being hacked, demanded the platform take action, and then her own printer began, spitting out pages in the middle of the night. Memes. One's calling her Karen of the Year. Others labeled her Queen of HOA Nothing. Even her ally Mark mentioned it at the gas station. Her house is haunted by internet trolls or something. He told me nervously, filling up his tank. She's losing it, man. But that was nothing compared to what came next. An email. We don't know who sent it. All we know is this. It landed in Deborah's inbox one Friday night, and by morning she was pacing her driveway like a caged animal. We know what you did in Arizona, and New Mexico, and Nevada. Stop now, or everyone else will know too. She went straight to the police, claimed we were cyber-terrorizing her, that we'd hired hackers to destroy her credibility. I got a call from a detective that afternoon. Mr. Miller, he said, we've had some complaints. Mrs. Reynolds says you've launched a targeted online attack. I remember laughing. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. I train horses for a living, I said. I can't even update my phone without Amelia's help. He chuckled, seemed to believe me. But still, something was happening behind the scenes. And my wife? She knew something. Because while Deborah screamed to the heavens about persecution, Amelia started smiling again, a little more every day, like someone who could see a storm coming and knew she wouldn't be standing in the rain. I finally confronted her one night. We were sitting on the porch. The stars were out. The air smelled like dry hay and pine. You've been acting different, I said. Not scared, not angry, calm. She looked over at me with that mysterious little smile. You notice everything. 15 years of marriage, I said. Of course I notice. She was quiet for a moment, then she said something I didn't expect. Sometimes, when someone pushes too far, too hard, they create their own ending. What do you mean? She's going to overreach. She has to. People like her always do. Overreach how? Let's just say, tomorrow's going to be interesting. She stood, kissed my cheek, and whispered, just trust me. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I couldn't shake the image of that black card I found in her jacket pocket. Not a credit card. Not a hotel key. Something else. She said it was for garage access. But why did it look like it belonged in a spy movie? The next day, I found out exactly what she meant by overreach. It was around 3 in the afternoon. Sun high, air thick, and that's when he showed up. A man in his 40s, clean cut, dressed like a security guard, only with extra patches and a shiny eye. Little badge pinned to his chest. He parked right outside our gate. Got out with a clipboard, walked straight onto our property like he owned the place, didn't knock, didn't call, started taking pictures. This property is in violation of multiple county codes, he announced loudly, walking around like a sheriff in a western. I dropped what I was doing and walked over. Fast. Excuse me, I said. This is private land. Who the hell are you? He flashed his badge quickly. Too quickly. County HOA Compliance Division, he said. My heart dropped. What? You are in violation of HOA mandates and County Code 13A. Cease operations immediately or face fines up to $50,000. There is no such thing as a County HOA Compliance Division. I knew that. But before I could speak, Amelia stepped out from the house, still in her bathrobe, still holding her phone. Only now. She looked different, like she'd just flipped a switch inside herself. I work for the government, she said evenly, and I know every department in this county. You're not on the list. He blanched, tried to recover. I have authority? Really? She said, already dialing. Because I just called the actual county office, they've never heard of you. She stared at him, hard, then tilted her head. You look familiar. Weren't you in that community theater production of Law and Order last month? He froze. I think there's a mistake. No mistake, she said, raising her phone higher. 911? Yes, we have an impersonator on our property. Fraudulent badge, possible scam, we'll wait for officers. He tried to back away, tried to leave, but I stepped in front of him. Oh no, I said. You're staying right here. And that's when the floodgates opened. He cracked like a dry twig. "She paid me," he blurted. "Deborah Reynolds said it was for a reality show. I didn't know it was illegal. She gave me a script." When the cops arrived, he had the texts, the receipts, the entire plan outlined. She'd paid him $500. Told him to act official. Told him to scare us into shutting down. And then she showed up, Deborah Reynolds, in all her red-suited, pearl-wearing glory. Only this time her composure was crumbling. "Officers, this is all a misunderstanding," she said. "Yes, I hired him, but I was told he was a real inspector. I'm the one who's been scammed." But the officers weren't buying it. "He has messages," one said. "You called it a pretend inspection, said it was to make them comply through fear. That's fraud, ma'am." The crowd was growing now. Billy was already streaming. Again. His new video. Fake inspector gets busted. Karen's plan backfires. And just like that, the internet caught fire. Amelia? She just stood there, calm, like this was all going according to plan, because it was, but I still didn't understand, not fully. That night, sitting beside her as she sorted folders and printed photos, I finally asked, "How did you know he was an actor?" Her smile was soft. "His badge number had too many digits. Rookie mistake." And that's when I realized something terrifying and thrilling. My wife wasn't just documenting a neighbor dispute. She was building a case. And Deborah Reynolds had just committed a federal crime. But I didn't know then that the next morning would change everything because Deborah wasn't done, not even close. And Amelia? She was about to show the entire town who she really was. Why did Amelia seem so calm? That's the question that kept echoing in my mind after the fake inspector was hauled off by the cops. She hadn't flinched, hadn't even raised her voice. She just handled it. Like she'd done it before, and that's when it really hit me. This wasn't the first time she'd dealt with someone like Deborah. I just never saw it before. Because I never needed to. That night, as we sat on the porch, the stars overhead felt farther away than usual, quieter, like the whole world was watching and waiting for what was coming next. "Amelia," I said softly, "she's not going to stop. You know that, right?" She nodded, sipping her tea like she was sitting in a cafe, not preparing for a showdown. "She's desperate now. She's losing her grip. But how can you be so sure she'll do something tomorrow?" "Because," she said, looking out, across the fields, "when people like Deborah lose control, they panic. And when they panic, they go too far. Tomorrow she'll try to strike while she still thinks she has power." That quiet confidence in her voice, it scared me. And thrilled. "Me, whatever happens," she added, placing her hand on mine, "just trust me. Even if it looks bad at first." She didn't blink. Didn't even look at me when she said it, because her mind was already 6 steps ahead. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I kept replaying everything in my head. The letters, the fake HOA rules, the actor, the live streams, the black access card I found in her jacket. What was my wife really involved in, and why was she so certain, so absolutely certain, that tomorrow would be the end of it? Turns out, it wasn't just the end. It was the explosion. The next morning, just as the sun cracked over the horizon, I heard the first car pull in, then another and another. 3 police cruisers, no sirens, just lights. Deborah stepped out of her silver sedan, like a soap opera villain entering stage left. Hair curled to perfection, lipstick on point, and a red pantsuit so aggressive it might as well have come with its own marching band. She looked like she'd spent all night preparing. Because she had Amelia was already on the porch, still in her robe, still drinking coffee. Billy Jenkins was there too, phone out, already live streaming, his flannel shirt practically glowing in the morning light. "This is it," he whispered into his mic. "The Karen has returned, and she brought back up." The police officers stepped forward. Deborah raised her portable speaker, clicked it on. Feedback screamed through the air. "Fellow citizens," she began, her voice shaking with self-importance. Today, we restore order to our community. The neighbors began gathering, about 30 people in total, some in pajamas, some with high, kids in tow. All drawn by the promise of drama, because Deborah had posted all night long, teasing a final showdown, promising justice, calling it the restoration of Oak Valley. She played it up like she was leading a revolution. "I have here," she shouted, holding up a thick stack of papers, "a legal eviction order, properly filed with the county. These individuals," she pointed at us like we were criminals, "have violated HOA code, endangered property values, and ignored repeated warnings. Today, they will be removed." The paper had stamps, signatures, even an embossed seal. From a distance, it looked legit. Even I felt my heart skip. The rookie, Cop Martinez, stepped forward, glancing between the papers and his senior partner. He was young, eager, nervous. "This looks official," he said. I scrambled, ran inside, grabbed our deed, our tax documents, anything I could find. "This is our property," I said, holding the folder in shaking hands. "We've owned it for 15 years. Deborah didn't even flinch. "These documents are superseded," she declared. "The Oak Valley HOA has invoked eminent domain." A ripple of confusion ran through the crowd. She smiled wider, like she loved being the smartest person in the room. "This land is being converted into a community garden for the betterment of Oak Valley. As president of the HOA, I have the authority to take possession under state beautification initiatives." "You can't do that," I said. "That's not how eminent domain works." Amelia didn't move, didn't speak. Just took another sip of coffee. Deborah pressed on. "Officers, arrest her," she commanded, voice rising. "She's trespassing on HOA property." Officer Martinez looked frozen. He glanced at the senior officer, who looked uncomfortable, but unsure. Then for the first time that morning, Amelia stood. She set her cup down, smoothed her robe, took one slow step down the porch. "John," she said quietly, without looking at me, "remember what I said." Then she reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, dialed. "This is Special Agent Miller," she said into the phone, her voice shifting, suddenly sharper, colder, completely foreign. "Code 7, Federal Crime in Progress, roll units, full tactical." The air changed, just like that. Everything stopped. The officers froze. Deborah's mouth fell open. The crowd went silent. Even the birds seemed to stop chirping. She lowered the phone, pocketed it like she hadn't just lit the fuse on a nuclear bomb. "What? What did you just say?" Deborah stammered. "You heard me." "That's not real. You're bluffing. You're not FBI. You plant flowers." Amelia just smiled and said nothing. The rookie officer looked pale. The senior officer started muttering into his radio. Deborah's voice got louder. "She's lying! She's playing pretend! Officers, do your job!" But no one moved. Then, the first black SUV crested the hill. Then a second, then two more. 4 government-issued vehicles. Sleek, dark, tinted windows. Subtle antennas. They didn't park. They deployed. Tires crunched. Doors flung open. 12 federal agents stepped out in full tactical gear. Bulletproof vests. Yellow FBI across their backs. Sidearms, radios, eyes scanning everything. The crowd gasped. Phones went up like a stadium wave. And Deborah, her face turned white. "No," she whispered. "No, this isn't real. This is a prank. A setup." The lead agent walked up to Amelia, saluted. "Special Agent in Charge, Miller. We've been monitoring Reynolds as requested. Warrant signed by Judge Patterson. Ready to execute on your command." Amelia nodded, accepted the leather folder without flinching, turned to Deborah. "You are under arrest for forgery of government documents, impersonation of federal authority, attempted fraud across state lines, and conspiracy to commit property theft." Deborah collapsed to her knees, literally, on the gravel, her perfect red pantsuit now coated in dust, her hair disheveled, her voice cracking. You tricked me," she sobbed. "You're a gardener. You're a rancher. You're nobody." "No," Amelia said, flipping open her badge. The gold gleamed in the sun like something out of a movie. I'm the director of white-collar crime operations for this region, and you just committed multiple felonies. The crowd exploded. Billy's stream hit 300,000 live viewers in under 10 minutes. Holy crap, someone shouted. She's really FBI. Deborah started to cry. Real tears, smearing mascara, her world crashing down. You don't understand, she whimpered. I was trying to improve the neighborhood. But Amelia didn't blink, didn't flinch. She just said, you picked the wrong ranch and the wrong wife. And just like that, it was over. Or so I thought. Because what came next was even bigger. You ever seen someone's world break? Not crack, not bend, but shatter. That was Deborah Reynolds, on her knees, in the dirt, surrounded by a growing crowd, a wall of federal agents, and a flood of live streams capturing her collapse in real time. Her red suit, the one she wore like armor, was covered in gravel dust. Her designer heels were scraped raw. Her perfect hair, tangled, stuck to her face with tears and sweat. And her voice, the same voice that once roared about compliance and property values, it had become a whisper. No, this isn't happening. But it was. She reached for her phone with trembling hands, tried to dial, tried to call someone, anyone, but fumbled and dropped it in the gravel. No one helped her, not the officers, not the neighbors, not even Mark. Her former vice president, who had conveniently vanished the moment the FBI arrived. Mrs. Reynolds, Amelia said, stepping forward, her voice calm but commanding, you are under federal arrest. Deborah whimpered. You tricked me. You made me believe. I didn't make you do anything, Amelia interrupted. I just documented everything you did. The lies, the forgeries, the victims. She pulled out a tablet. Yes, her bathrobe. Had another pocket. And yes, it held a government-grade tablet, like she'd planned this reveal to the last detail. This is the file, she said, turning it on. Names, addresses, dates, receipts, wire transfers, fake documents you filed across 7 states. Deborah shook her head violently. That's not real. That's photoshopped. That's... You want to talk about real? Amelia asked, her tone colder than I'd ever heard. She held up a document. The crowd leaned in. Phones zoomed. This is an email you sent to your sister in 2019, Amelia said, reading aloud. Found another group of suckers going to hit him with HOA fees they won't see coming. Deborah gasped. That was private. And this, Amelia continued, flipping to another screen, is a spreadsheet from your laptop and which we seized this morning. Labeled, fines collected, total, $2.57 million. The crowd audibly reacted. Some gasped, some cursed. One woman clutched her chest and whispered, oh my God, Billy's livestream chat exploded. HOA Karen exposed. This is better than Netflix, she stole from old people? Karen vs FBI, Dr. Justice served. 53 families, Amelia said, her voice sharp now. You faked HOA paperwork in Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and now here. Retirees, widows, military families. You sent them forged letters, demanded fake fees, threatened them with eviction. Some even paid you with life insurance money. No, Deborah sobbed. I didn't think. You didn't care. Amelia knelt in front of her, inches from her face. You knew exactly what you were doing, and your biggest mistake wasn't the fake HOA. It wasn't even hiring an actor to pose as a compliance officer. She stood again, eyes scanning the crowd, the officers, the agents, and finally me. Your mistake was trying to evict a federal agent from her own home. The lead FBI agent stepped forward. Agents Davis and Smith, take her into custody. They approached calmly, professional, no hand on weapons, no shouting. Deborah tried to pull away. I'll sue, she shrieked. You'll see, this is a setup. Entrapment. I'm the real victim here. But her legs gave out again. And this time she landed hard, flat on her back, hair sprawled, skirt bunched. They helped her up, cuffed her, and walked her to the waiting SUV, the whole time she screamed. You don't understand. They have 8 horses. The smell, the noise, it's ruining the neighborhood. They're criminals. They muck stalls in their bathrobes. The crowd laughed, not cruelly, just in disbelief, because the image was absurd. A woman screaming about livestock while being escorted away by federal agents for nationwide HOA fraud. "You're not even real FBI," she cried, one last desperate attempt to save face. "You wear overalls." Amelia didn't even respond. She just turned to the crowd. "Thank you all for being here," she said. "Your recordings, your documentation, your support, it helped." Someone shouted from the back, "How long you been FBI?" She smiled. 15 years. Another voice, "And your husband didn't know?" She looked at me, and that smile turned warm again. He never asked what I really did at the federal building. The crowd laughed. More cheers. Phones waved like lighters at a concert. Billy's stream hit 500,000 live viewers. And somewhere, on some server, a hashtag was going viral. Karen vs. FBI Deborah screamed something unintelligible as the SUV door closed. And then she was gone. The crowd started to break apart. Some shaking their heads, some grinning, some still in shock. The senior officer walked over to Amelia, his face pale, his hands slightly shaking. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I almost arrested a federal agent." "It's okay," Amelia said gently. "They were excellent forgeries. She's had a lot of practice." The rookie, Martinez, looked like he wanted to crawl into the earth. Amelia walked up to him. "You did your best," she said. "But next time, trust your instincts. Real authority never shouts to be heard." He nodded silently. Probably learned more that morning than he did in the entire academy. Then it was quiet again. The lawn, the porch, just us, just the horses in. The background unfazed. I looked at Amelia, my wife, my partner, my protector, and finally asked what I hadn't dared until now. "So, how long have you been watching her?" She sighed. Finally sat back down on the porch swing, pulled off her slippers like nothing had happened. "She first popped up in our system 5 years ago. We suspected fraud, but she kept moving. Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, each time, new names, new fake HOAs, always just small enough to avoid state-level attention. Until she moved in next door, she nodded, and filed her first fake document here, under a name we already had in our system. She looked at me then, and her voice softened. I never wanted to mix this life with that life. But when she tried to evict us, I had to let it play out. And the printer, the hacked Facebook page? She smirked. Let's just say, I have friends. We both laughed. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I love this ranch, she said. I love our life. I just also happen to catch white-collar criminals when I'm not weeding the flower beds. I looked out across our land, the same land Deborah had tried to steal. I've never been prouder of you, I said. She squeezed my hand. I've been protecting this place for 15 years, John. This time, you just got to see it. Silence never felt so loud. After the last SUV vanished down the dirt road, Deborah inside, wrists cuffed, mascara streaking, the crowd just stood there, phones still recording, mouths half open, some blinking like they were trying to reboot. Their brains. I mean, how do you process that? Your neighbor, the one who bakes apple pies, plants tulips, and waves at the mailman every morning, just took down a multi-state criminal operation in her bathrobe. Someone whispered, "That was the most badass thing I've ever seen." Someone else whispered back, "I feel like I should salute her or something." Billy Jenkins was still streaming, eyes wide, the camera trembling in his hand. The chat was a blur of caps-locked chaos. I need this movie. She's literally FBI Karen Slayer. The bathrobe reveal was wild. Someone pitched this to Netflix ASAP. He finally ended the stream with a slow, stunned nod and a single sentence. Well, folks, I think I just filmed the internet's new favorite hero. Back on the porch, Amelia kicked off her slippers like it was any other morning, picked up her now lukewarm coffee, took a sip. I just stared at her. 15 years. I said again. 15. You keep saying that like it's a crime. It's just, I couldn't find the words. You never even hinted. I did, she said, eyes twinkling. You just didn't connect the dots. She wasn't wrong. All those times she came home late. The boring government desk job. The security clearances. The weirdly high-end surveillance cameras she said she got on sale. And that card I found in her jacket. Not for the garage, but the FBI field office she ran. I shook my head. I'm married to Jason Bourne in yoga pants, she laughed. More like Nancy Drew with a badge. The fallout hit like wildfire. Deborah's arrest made headlines. Local, regional, national. Turns out HOA scams were more common than anyone realized. And Deborah, she was their queen. 7 states. Over $2.5 million in fraudulent fines collected. 53 families targeted. Dozens of fake HOA documents traced back to her printer. One spreadsheet literally titled, Suckers, and the cherry on top? She'd recorded voice memos, bragging, planning, even mocking her victims. All of it was now evidence. Within 3 days, she'd been formally charged with federal crimes. Conspiracy, forgery, impersonating a government official, mail fraud, wire fraud. The list kept growing. The trial was inevitable. The sentence? Even more so. But the real story, the one everyone wanted, was Amelia. The media started circling, like buzzards. Reporters showed up at the ranch. Camera crews asked for interviews. People offered book deals, documentary pitches, podcast episodes. Even a late-night host did a bit. Imagine thinking you're evicting a flower-planting ranch wife, only to find out she's a federal agent with a file on you thicker than your HOA handbook. Our mailbox overflowed with letters. Some from former victims of Deborah's scams thanking Amelia, some from teenagers saying she inspired them, some from random people across the globe, just writing to say, thank you for being the good kind. Of quiet. Even the FBI released a public statement, rare for them, commending Amelia's operation and confirming her role in the investigation. Apparently, the agency had been tracking Deborah for years, but she always slipped away, until she moved next to the one person who wouldn't let her. She played herself, one agent told me privately. She walked straight into the wolf's den. Billy posted a video montage titled HOA Karen versus FBI Full Saga. It hit 1 million views in under 48 hours. It had dramatic music, slow motion clips, and the moment Amelia pulled out her badge in glorious 4K. The top comment? She sipped her coffee like a queen while calling in a tactical unit. I have chills. Another? This is why you don't mess with women who garden in silence. They are always plotting justice. Even that trended for a bit. Gardeners of Justice people. Started cosplaying as Amelia at conventions, flannel shirt, FBI badge, coffee cup. The strangest part? Amelia hated the attention. She didn't do interviews. She didn't pose for photos. She politely declined every single media request. When I asked why, she just shrugged. Doing your job isn't a performance, she said. And the best victories don't need applause. Life slowly returned to normal, if you could call anything normal after that. Deborah's case moved swiftly through the courts. With overwhelming evidence and national pressure, she pleaded guilty to multiple charges. 7 years in federal prison. Full restitution ordered to all victims. But even prison couldn't stop her from lashing out. She released a handwritten statement calling herself the real victim and accused Amelia of psychological entrapment. She pretended to be weak, the letter ranted. She let me incriminate myself. It's a setup. She let me incriminate myself. That was actually in writing. Billy made a video just reading it aloud with dramatic music. That alone got 500,000 views. Meanwhile, the ranch finally felt peaceful again. Neighbors brought over pies, cards. Even one of the police officers, Martinez, stopped by and awkwardly apologized. I didn't mean to almost arrest your wife, he said. I'm sure she could have arrested you if she wanted to, I replied. He didn't laugh, just nodded slowly like that was a very real possibility. And me? I was still processing. One night, I sat on the porch, watching Amelia clip roses. The same hands that built case files and wrote reports were now cutting blooms with perfect precision. I don't know how you kept it all secret, I said. I never lied, she replied. You just saw the parts I wanted you to. Are there more parts? She smiled. I guess we'll find out. Then she walked inside, humming softly, like the most dangerous woman in the county wasn't also making dinner and folding laundry. That night, I noticed a new sign at the ranch gate, a small wooden one, burned into the wood in careful letters. HOA free zone, protected by FBI. I raised an eyebrow. You make that? Billy had it made, she said. As a joke. You planning to keep it up? She nodded. Oh yeah, I like the message. I grinned. So did I. Because sometimes protection doesn't look like barbed wire and barking dogs. Sometimes it looks like a woman in flannel, sipping coffee, and waiting for the moment justice finally knocks. Or in this case, roars up in 4 black SUVs. It's strange how quickly people rewrite history once the villain's gone. Just a week after Deborah was hauled off in handcuffs, you'd think no one had ever supported her. Not Mark, her vice president, who suddenly stopped answering calls and posted a vague apology about being misled. Not the 3 neighbors who once waved signs during her fake HOA meetings, now claiming they always had their doubts. Not even the joggers who once nodded along to her rants while filming her live streams. They now cross the road to avoid walking past our ranch. Funny how silence turns to self-preservation when the cameras leave. But that's not what got to me. What got to me was the way they looked at Amelia now. Before, they'd barely noticed her. The quiet woman in gardening gloves. The wife of that horse guy. The one who waved politely and wore the same canvas hat for 5 summers. Straight. Now, they whispered her name like she was legend. Did you know she's FBI? She's still married to him. She looks normal, but she's probably watching everyone. It wasn't said with fear, it was awe. She'd become something else in their eyes. Not just the woman who took down the HOA scammer, but the one person in the entire neighborhood who saw evil coming and stopped it. And she did it in a bathrobe. The ranch itself started feeling different. Not bad, not tense, just known, famous even. People started showing up, not just locals. Fans. A couple from Colorado drove 8 hours to take a photo in front of the gate. An entire film class from a nearby college asked if they could shoot a dramatic reenactment in our barn. One guy from Oklahoma mailed us a hand-carved sign that read, "Mess around and find out. S to your FBI division of mucking stalls." Even local businesses got in on it. The feed store sold Karen Free Zone bumper stickers. The bakery down the road made justice served cookies shaped like little red blazers. And Billy Jenkins, he hit 1 million subscribers. His channel now had playlists. HOA horror stories, FBI wife versus HOA queen, Karen downfall, full arc in 7 episodes. At the center of it all, Amelia, still tending to her roses, still making dinner like it wasn't a national news story, when she made an arrest on her front lawn, still pretending she wasn't a walking legend. One evening, she finally let me into her world. We were sitting by the fire pit. It was late. Crickets chirping. Stars thick overhead. She pulled out a thin folder from her jacket. "Want to see something?" she asked. I nodded. Inside were photos, notes, surveillance, logs, all of it on Deborah, going back 6 years. How long have you been tracking her? Since Reno. She went dark for a bit, changed her name twice. But when she popped back up here and bought the old Henderson place under her real name, she looked at me, eyes glinting in the firelight. It was personal. She turned to the last page. A picture of a woman, not Deborah. An older lady, kind eyes, hair up in a bun. "Who's that?" I asked. Amelia's voice dropped. Her name was Mrs. Ellis, a widow, lived in Nevada, paid Deborah $4,800 in compliance fines. Used her husband's funeral savings. I swallowed. She died 2 weeks later. Heart attack. Her daughter told us she was under so much stress. She stopped eating. A silence fell between us. It was heavy. Real. Amelia's eyes didn't move from the page. That's when I promised. Myself. she said, her voice barely a whisper. I'd stop her, no matter where she went. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone I'd never quite seen before. Not a wife, not a gardener, not a federal agent, but a protector. Of people who'd never know her name, of lives broken quietly behind picket fences and phony letters, of neighborhoods like ours. She'd been fighting long before Deborah moved in, long before any of us realized we were part of the battlefield. But just when things felt safe again, something changed. It started with an envelope. Plain. No return address, delivered not by mail, but left in our mailbox by hand. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Typed, one sentence. She wasn't working alone. That was it. No signature, no explanation. No stamp, just that single chilling message. I showed it to Amelia, she read it. Expression blank. Then folded it neatly and slipped it into her coat. No reaction, not at first. But later that night, I noticed her double-checking the locks, installing one more camera at the far end of the property, updating her laptop's encryption, settings, and she didn't hum while gardening anymore. She was watching, waiting, thinking. She hadn't just taken down Deborah, she'd triggered something, and she knew it. I asked her once softly, "Is it true? Was there someone else?" She didn't answer right away. Then she looked at me and said the most terrifying, thrilling words I'd ever heard from her. There always is. We thought Deborah was the end of it. Turns out, she was just the beginning. It started quietly, the way most dangerous things do. The day after that anonymous note appeared in our mailbox, the one that said, "She wasn't working alone," Amelia shifted, not dramatically, not obviously, but I could see it. The way she scanned the tree line when we did morning chores, the way she paused before opening emails, the way her voice lowered when she answered. Certain phone calls, she was still Amelia, still my wife, still tending to the horses, baking from scratch, and sorting through seed catalogs like she was planning a spring garden instead of preparing for war. But behind her eyes, something had sharpened, like she was expecting someone, and not someone friendly. I asked her one night, "You think the note's real?" She looked up from her laptop. Her face was calm. "It doesn't matter if it's real," she said. "What matters is someone wants me looking over my shoulder. Is it working?" She smiled faintly. "No, but I'm looking anyway." A week passed, then another. Things seemed calm, too calm. Then Amelia got a call. She answered like she always did, with that clipped professional tone that made people sit up straighter, and immediately went pale. "Where?" she asked, standing. "How long ago?" She didn't explain, just grabbed her coat, keys, and phone. She kissed my cheek and said, "Don't wait up." I watched the taillights disappear down our long dirt road. That was the first time I truly worried since Deborah's arrest. Not because Amelia had left, but because she didn't tell me why. She came back just after midnight. I was still awake, sitting by the window, staring into the dark. Her face was pale. Her shoulders heavy. She looked like someone who'd just seen a ghost. I didn't ask, didn't have to. She sat beside me on the couch and said, "Another HOA popped up in Nevada. Same structure, same language, same fake seals." "Deborah again?" She shook her head. "No, someone new, but using her exact templates." "You think it's connected?" She didn't answer, just opened her laptop and began typing. That night, she worked until dawn. In the days that followed, pieces started falling into place. Amelia called it a pattern buried inside a pattern. While Deborah was loud, attention-seeking, theatrical, this new player was quiet, precise. A paper trail, yes, but carefully engineered, not forged in haste, not sloppy like Deborah's Comic Sans HOA rules. Whoever was behind this, they were better, worse. By the end of the week, Amelia had a name, sort of, Samuel. That's what the emails signed off as. She found the address. A shell company registered out of Albuquerque, paid for through crypto, all tied to a private equity group that specialized in property acquisitions. "Someone's building a system," she said. And Deborah was just the test run, I felt the chill settle between us. You're saying this isn't about one HOA scam? No, she said, staring at her screen. It's about many, hidden behind fake names, fake boards, fake presidents. And then, with a quiet, sinking certainty, she added, and they're targeting people who won't fight back. What we discovered next shook us both. Deborah kept meticulous records, sloppy, sure, but detailed, and tucked inside her digital files. Folders Amelia had recovered from her seized laptop were messages she never sent. Drafts, notes to herself, some rants, some confessions, some warnings. One line stood out. S says, if I screw up, he'll cut me loose like he did in Phoenix. S. That name again. Amelia ran facial recognition software on the guest list from Deborah's fake HOA events. And there he was, a man in the background of a video, wearing sunglasses, watching, never speaking, appearing in photos from 3 different states, always standing near the president of the HOA, never in the spotlight, never on record, but always there. Amelia froze when she saw him. That's not Samuel, she said softly. That's someone else. Someone I've seen before. Where? She stared at the screen for a long moment, then said something I didn't expect. 15 years ago. He was investigated for real estate fraud in D.C., never charged. Everything was buried. He disappeared. And now he's resurfaced. Behind Deborah, she nodded. He's the architect. She was just the puppet. The more Amelia dug, the darker it got. HOAs used as fronts for land acquisitions. Elderly homeowners pressured to sell through fines they didn't legally owe. Fake citations. Anonymous neighbor complaints. Then a knock on the door. Amelia froze. We weren't expecting anyone. It was 10:48 p.m. She motioned for me to stay back, then opened the door just a crack. A plain envelope had been slid under it. No one was there. Inside, a flash drive, and one sentence, again typed, "She's not the only agent in your house." Amelia stared at it for a long moment, then slowly closed the door. She didn't plug it in. She didn't even touch it again. Just locked it in her safe, changed the code, and sat down. "John," she said quietly, "we're being watched." That night, I barely slept. Every noise outside made me sit up. Every flicker of light through the window made me reach for the flashlight. And Amelia? She didn't sleep at all. She sat at her desk until sunrise, back straight, eyes clear, unblinking. 2 days later, she called in a favor. Not from the local FBI. From Langley. I heard the name whispered on the call, a name she hadn't spoken in years. "A woman. Bring her in," Amelia said into the phone. Full clearance. And when I asked who she meant, she didn't answer. She just looked at me, like she didn't want me to know, like she couldn't tell me yet. Something was coming, bigger than Deborah, bigger than us. And Amelia? She wasn't. Just preparing for another investigation. She was preparing for war, the kind where you don't announce yourself, the kind where you don't know who the enemy is until it's already too late. That night, after we locked the gates and shut off the lights, I sat beside her on the porch. She didn't say much, just looked out at the stars, but I could see it in her posture, the tension, the readiness. "Do you ever wish," I asked, "that we'd just been normal?" She looked at me, tired but certain. "We are normal," she said. "We're just the kind of normal that doesn't let monsters live next door." I nodded slowly, but I couldn't shake the feeling growing in my chest. If Deborah wasn't working alone, if someone else was watching, then what exactly had Amelia stepped into, and who or what way was coming next? It always ends the same way. Not with shouting, not with sirens, but with a single quiet moment. That's what Amelia told me the night before everything broke. We were sitting in the living room, her laptop closed for once, a fire crackling low in the hearth. And she looked tired, not in her face, but behind her eyes, like the weight of knowing something terrible was coming had finally settled on her shoulders. "Tomorrow," she said, "we end this." I wanted to ask what she meant, but I didn't, because by then I understood something most people never get the chance to see. My wife didn't bluff. It started just after 9 a.m. 3 SUVs pulled up, unmarked but unmistakable, same models used. In federal operations, same tinted windows, same low hum of engines that sound like they know too much. Only this time, they weren't here for Deborah, they were here for him. The man Amelia had identified, not as Samuel, but as the real architect of the scam. The one who'd stood in the background of HOA meetings across 5 states. The one who'd never signed anything, never filed anything, but left fingerprints on every fake fine, every fraudulent policy, every quiet family eviction. His name was Robert Kane, a former real estate attorney, disbarred, vanished. Until now, he was hiding in plain sight in a glass-walled office downtown, registered under an alias. Running a property management consultancy. And from there, he was orchestrating everything: fake HOAs, fake boards, fake code violations, all designed to make struggling homeowners hand over their land. Piece by piece, Amelia had tracked him for months. Quietly, methodically, she built a file thick enough to crush a man's life. Not just documents, not just wire transfers, but testimonies, emails, footage, dozens of victims, all too afraid to speak. Until they saw Deborah taken down. And the flash drive, the one left on our porch, that wasn't a threat. It was a leak from someone on the inside, someone who wanted Amelia to finish what she started. At 9:12 a.m., federal agents walked into Kane's office. He didn't resist, didn't argue, just smiled. A strange, amused smile. Like he knew it was coming. Like he didn't care. Amelia was there, not in the room, but close, watching from a secure building across the street. I sat beside her in a small observation room, heart racing, when they showed her the cuffs on his wrists. She didn't cheer, didn't smile, she just nodded, like justice had simply arrived, exactly on schedule. But Kane wasn't finished. As they led him out, he turned to one of the agents and said something we couldn't hear. The agent repeated it later. Kane had leaned in and whispered, "There's always another HOA." The next few weeks were a blur. Kane's arrest made headlines, bigger than Deborah's, because this wasn't just one neighborhood con. It was a system, a network of fake associations designed to pressure, fine, and force homeowners into surrendering property under the illusion of compliance. Deborah had been the face. Kane was the hand behind the curtain. And now, it was all unraveling. Across 7 states, investigations began. OAs shut down overnight. Victims came forward. Some broke down in tears during interviews. Some just shook their heads and whispered, "I thought I was alone." They weren't. Not anymore. Because one woman, a ranch wife in overalls, had made it her mission to stop the storm, and she did. The morning after Kane was indicted, I found Amelia on the porch. She was barefoot, drinking tea, watching the horses, graze in the far pasture like it was just another Tuesday. "You did it," I said softly. She didn't respond at first. Then finally she said, "No, we did." I looked at her. "How many people did you save?" She shook her head. "That's not how I count." "Then how do you count?" She took a sip of tea. "By the ones who won't be targeted now." And for a while, we sat in silence. The good kind, the kind that comes after a storm. Life returned to something like normal. News vans stopped showing up. People stopped asking for interviews. Billy's channel plateaued at 1 million subscribers. Still famous, still funny, but no longer in crisis mode. And Amelia? She kept working, quietly, privately, sometimes from home, sometimes from places I wasn't allowed to ask about. But something had changed. She wasn't hiding anymore. The neighbors knew. The community knew. I knew. And for the first time in our marriage, I understood the weight she carried, the cases, the victims, the decisions. I asked her once, "Why didn't you ever tell me everything?" She looked down, then said something I'll never forget. "Because if I told you, you'd never sleep again." And she wasn't wrong, but still, I was glad to finally see all of her, the wife, the agent, the protector, and somewhere in all of it, The quiet woman who still cried when a foal was born and still planted wildflowers on the edge of the fence line because she liked the way they looked in morning light. The ranch got a new sign. A real one this time. Metal, bolted into the gate. Oak. Valley Ranch. Private property, HOA free, FBI protected. People still stop to take pictures, and I don't mind, because behind that sign lives a woman who saved dozens of families and asked for nothing in return. No awards, no spotlight, just a mug of tea, a good horse, and a garden to tend when the world finally stops spinning. So if you've made it this far, if you're still watching, still listening, let me leave you with this. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who say nothing for the longest time, the ones who don't shout, don't demand, don't threaten. They just wait. They watch. They build their case, and when the time comes, they stand up, badge in hand, and say, "You picked the wrong ranch." And that's when everything changes.